With Colorado struggling, I think a lot of people are ready to jump off the bandwagon. But as Deion Sanders and Joel Embiid once said, it's time to trust the process.
You are Locked On Buffs, your daily podcast on the Colorado Buffaloes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Buffs. I am your host, Kevin Borba. Today's episode of Locked On Buffs is brought to you by LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business, and that's why LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. Terms and conditions apply. We are also brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day for free, and wherever you get your podcast, I'll be right here every single day giving you the best Colorado content you could find. Okay. It's time to look into, I guess, the future a little bit and just the present for Colorado. I think there's a lot of frustration with Coach Prime. I think there's a lot of frustration with this team. And I think there's a lot of frustration with the situation overall in general. I've seen a lot of hype and excitement about the team turn into what is happening? What the hell is going on? What's wrong with the program? And I think at the end of the day, Coach Prime said it best and Joel Embiid said it best. They need to trust the process. So when asked about their struggles or whatever it may be after the Oregon State game, which they obviously lost, he said he was talking about Sean Lewis as well. And he said, because the reporter was trying to ask him, what did Sean Lewis do or what did Pat Shurmur bring that Sean Lewis didn't do or something like that during the game? What were they seeing? What was the difference? And he said, we're not going to demean Sean Lewis. We're not going to take that tone. Sean is a good man. I think he's a good play caller. We just needed a change at the time. We needed to try something else at the time, and that's what we did. And then he said, let's just trust the process. And I think it's a tough phrase to hear, I guess you could say, because you bring on Sean Lewis as the highest paid assistant in program history. You bring in a guy who was a head coach, renowned for being one of the most up-and-coming, forward-thinking offensive minds in college football. And then you kind of just toss him to the side like Andy did with his toys in Toy Story once he got new toys. And it's like, or once he got older or whatever. And it's like, what happened to Sean Lewis? Like, he's the guy. Everybody was excited about the hire. That was the best hire of the offseason, I think you could say, outside of Deion Sanders himself. And I think at the end of the day, I did some digging. I talked around to people who are close to the situation. They said that there's just a lot of cooks in the kitchen. That's what I was told. And I think that's a fair assessment. I think that's kind of aside from Sean Lewis, I think there's 3 or 4 other guys on the staff that were head coaches at one point. And so when you are, especially an offensive coach, for instance, when you have an offense and that thing is your baby and it's like, I made this offense, I call the offense, this is my thing, this is what I do. And Coach Prime comes in and he's like, this is what we should do. And he's the head coach. So obviously what he says doesn't mean that everybody agrees with it. And so if based on what I'm hearing and based on just kind of putting 2 and 2 together, it seems like there was some beef. There was not beef. I guess beef is a bad high school term, but there was some tension as to what they were doing and how they were doing it. And I think there's a lot of room for interpretation when you think about how things were being operated in Colorado. Either way, Colorado fans shouldn't lose hope. I like to throw this graphic up every once in a while, and I think it's fair to do this right now. Coming into the season, Colorado's win total was 3.5. So people thought they were going to win 3 games or less. Barely thought they were going to surpass 3. They surpassed 3 quickly into the season. Honestly, they had chances to do it. I think in the first month they were 3-0, obviously, and then they lost to Oregon, and then they had a tight one against USC where had they started better, they would have won that game. And so you have to look at the bigger picture. I think you look at Colorado's recruiting class last year, they had a top 25 recruiting class, and they didn't really start recruiting until obviously Coach Prime was hired, which was right before the early signing day period, which is coming up in December. And you look at their class now, they're ranked 63rd overall. They have 10 commits, and it's like, 63. Again, Jordan Seaton's on the board. Like, these are guys that are on the, let me go to their, offers. And these are the guys that are on the board right now. You have Jordan Seaton. You have guys like Draylon Miller, 4-star receiver, 66th player in the country. You have Josiah Martin, a wide receiver. You have Jamar Taylor Jr., a wide receiver. Deion Kallman, wide receiver. You guys got offensive tackles. There's not a lot of offensive linemen left, but there is some. Then you guys got, let's just see, Zaheen Scott. You got Solomon Williams. There's a lot of guys out there, is what I'm trying to say. I don't know which guys they're actively pursuing, which guys they are. Some of them there, like Jordan Seaton, the 4-star wide receiver. They're pursuing those guys, yes. And then Jordan Seaton's the 5-star offensive tackle. They're pursuing those guys. And as we all know, no commitment is safe from Coach Prime until there's pen put to paper. We've seen it with Cormani, Travis, Dylan Edwards. They flipped him from Notre Dame. Like, they're just give Coach Prime some time. And I think it's going to be tough for Colorado to make a bowl game. They obviously have to win 2 out of the next 3. And I wrote about this today, and you could go check it out over. I reposted on my Athlon site, but it's over on my other site at Fan Nation. Colorado has, I believe it's an 18% chance of making a bowl game. So if it doesn't work out, that's extra time for them to recruit. If it does work out, then they'll still be able to recruit. It's just they're obviously going to have to focus on the bowl game a bit. Either way, Coach Prime is going to recruit. He's the hottest name in college football. He's the most famous person in college football, maybe even college football history, which I feel like feels premature. But in terms of just overall buzz that he's generating, I don't think anyone else has generated this buzz. It reminds me of, like, this is my Mount Rushmore of famous college football figures, and this isn't like success or like this isn't based off success, wins, losses, awards, championships. It's just who I think is probably the most famous college football people in my lifetime. Tim Tebow, Johnny Manziel, Nick Saban, Cam Newton was up there for sure, and then Deion Sanders, I would say, is they'd round up my top 5. I feel like I don't know if I'm missing anybody. Reggie Bush was famous too, so 6. Those are my top 6. Adrian Peterson, 7. Those are my top 7. Let me know if I'm missing anybody within. I was born in 1999, so let's try to pick someone within that range. But he's the most famous person by far, or one of the most famous people, and I think he just has a lot to offer. He's going to continue to use the transfer portal. Whether it works out, don't know, but he's going to bring in guys. That's the one thing about Coach Prime and his staff. I think they're going to have no issue bringing in talent. It's about their development of the talent, which is where they will make or break their bread, or make or break their seasons and future at this program, if you will. So I think there's a lot to look into for Colorado. It's definitely going to be a tougher stretch, but at the end of the day, Colorado is a program that's trending in the upward direction. I think the Big 12 is a weak conference and will be a weak conference. Utah and Arizona State will also be trending up. Arizona. Honestly, the 4 Pac-12 schools may be the best programs in the Big 12. I'll just put it that way. I think the rest of the Big 12 is struggling, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. So I think the 4 new Pac-12 schools that are going to the Big 12 will all fare well. And so trust Deion, trust Coach Prime. He's going to recruit well. He's going to get transfers. He's going to and this is touching on what I posted yesterday. I think with the demotion of Sean Lewis, you could, and then I've had people say it's not a demotion. If you come to call plays, you leave a head coaching job to call plays, and you no longer call plays and choose the plays, that is demotion. I don't like that's. Let's call a spade a spade. I think the Sean Lewis experiment in Colorado is probably going to end. It's just kind of how things shake out. I think it was a change that Coach Prime felt was needed, so I respect his decision for that. But I think it's a change that will probably lead to Sean Lewis looking elsewhere. And plus, you have to factor this in, guys. Sean Lewis was going to leave regardless. Like, that was, whether it was year 1 or year two, he wants to be a head coach. Like, he left Kent State as a head coach to come to Colorado to be on a bigger stage, a bigger platform, and he showed out what he could do. They went 3-0, and I want to say it was by week 4 or 5 when Mel Tucker had his issues. Oh, Midnight Mel, where Sean Lewis was a candidate for the Michigan State job. There was an article written recently over at Fox Sports that he is on the short list of candidates for Michigan State. Northwestern is another job he may be in the mix for, and he may get another high-profile offensive coordinator job if that's not where it works out. Maybe Notre Dame looks elsewhere. Maybe Iowa, who has been struggling mightily with their offense, and the coach's son, who was the offensive coordinator, stepped down because he wasn't going to score 30 points a game. Maybe he goes there and revitalizes the Iowa offense. Who knows? But Sean Lewis is bound to leave, and I think Coach Prime will find a proper replacement. And I don't know if that's going to be Pat Shermer. Don't know if he's going to go hire a guy like GJ Kine not GJ Kine, Jake Spavital from Cal, because I imagine this Cal experiment with Justin Wilcox is going to be over. There's going to be guys out there. There's going to be guys who are looking for opportunities, and I think Coach Prime is going to find these guys, whether it's recruits, transfers, coaches. Everyone wants to be associated with Coach Prime. I think you just have to kind of fall in line and do things his way. And I think that's maybe where Sean Lewis didn't always agree with, or maybe that's the problems at hand there. So it'll be interesting to see how that continues to move forward. But like I said, Colorado is ahead of schedule. I think most people are just disappointed because there was so much buzz to start the season, but that's how life works out sometimes. This episode of Locked On Bus is brought to you by Athletic Brewing. It's time for my Game Changer of the Week, brought to you by Athletic Brewing. Much like Shedeur Sanders late in the second half, Athletic Brewing Company has completely changed the non-alcoholic beer game. They make non-alcoholic beers that actually taste good. Shedeur Sanders, they were down, and they needed some big plays. And even though he's all beat up and clearly hurting, he almost led a comeback, but some time management things hurt Colorado. Either way, as a game changer, he's my Game Changer of the Week. Is there a game-changing player moment for you? Let me know in the comment section. I think it was Shedeur or Travis Hunter could also be a good one. But back to Athletic Brewing Company. They completely changed the non-alcoholic beer game. They make full-strength brews that are great chasing and award-winning and beat out full-strength beers in global competitions. They are fit for all time, so you can drink them anywhere, anytime, and you make any activity more enjoyable. It's like you could watch a big game. You could watch your kids' game. You could drink some at work or while you're working out. The best part is there's no hangovers ever. You can find Athletic in-store, online, and at beer bars around the country. You can find Athletic Brewing Company's non-alcoholic brews at a store near you or buy online at athleticbrewing.com. First-time customers can use code LOCKEDON to get 15% off your first online order. That's code LOCKEDON at checkout for 15% off at athleticbrewing.com. Near beer, exclusions and conditions apply. Athletic Brewing Company, fit for all times. Welcome back. We are talking about Shedeur Sanders. I think one of the things that we've noticed, or that I've noticed around Colorado, is obviously Shedeur, Travis, Shiloh to an extent, but I don't think he's not as covered, or I wouldn't say he's not as covered. When they send the representatives to speak to the media, it's usually Shedeur and Travis. So I wouldn't say Shiloh's like forgotten about, but we obviously just don't see him talking to the media as much. But one thing we have noticed is, like, Shiloh was on Pat McAfee, and they're always trying to bait the Sanders brothers and Travis Hunter into saying something big. Everybody wants the headline from Shedeur. Everyone wants the headline from Travis Hunter. Everyone wants the headline from Deion, Shiloh. Who else? Maybe like a wide receiver like Jimmy Horn Jr. or someone. Everyone wants them to slip up and say, take a shot at someone else, or take a shot at this, or take a shot at that. And we saw that on Saturday. So after the game, as you guys all know, I kind of touched on it yesterday and today a little bit. Coach Prime demotes Sean Lewis, promotes Pat Shermer to call plays, and Shedeur was asked about it after the game. Obviously, they lost, and obviously the offense struggled. They only put up 283 yards of offense on the day. Under Sean Lewis, they averaged like 408, I believe the number is. Shedeur Sanders had like 44 yards passing heading into halftime, and it wasn't until late in the fourth quarter that Colorado was really able to do anything. And so the question asked was essentially, what was the difference between Pat Shermer and Sean Lewis? This is me paraphrasing. I don't remember the word for word what the question was, but what was the difference? And Shedeur, being the leader that he is, and which I want to give, this is why I did a segment about this. I want to give Shedeur Sanders his flowers. He has been a great leader and a great teammate this whole year. Because I think he's had ample opportunities to be like, this offensive line is terrible. They can't block for me. I'm always getting hit. He will always just say, I'm a little banged up. Like, he never throws anybody under the bus. And I think he knows, one, he knows that the backfire he would get. But two, I think he's just a great teammate. And I think people are more focused on this, which the watch celebration, I have a watch on, but you get it. The watch celebration or his NIL value, because I think he's the first, or he's top three for sure. I know it's him, Bronny James, and Arch Manning are all up there. And I think they focus on more of Shedeur, the character, rather than Shedeur, the person. And Shedeur Sanders is a great teammate for Colorado. And He's a great teammate and obviously very well PR trained. And he says, I mean, at that point, you're just asking me a setup question. You just want a headline question. I'm not even going to answer that. Honestly, I can't even answer that, Shedeur Sanders said. And obviously the reporter kind of tried to play it off like he wasn't meaning to set him up. But as a reporter, and this isn't me trying to say I've asked setup questions, but there's certain topics that are trending. And so you ask them about things that you want to discuss. I've asked multiple coaches within the past few weeks about Michigan's sign stealing scandal. Obviously, people want to hear about sign stealing. And so obviously, as a reporter, I write about it. I'm like, okay, so-and-so said this about sign stealing. I asked Sean Lewis and Charles Kelly prior to the year what they were hoping to see from their units, who were they were all brand new, obviously. And so I asked them that because obviously Colorado had talked about bringing in new guys and bringing in all these transfers after the spring game. And so I was like, okay, what does that look like for you? Like, how do you coach that? That's all. It's not leading questions. It's just people want to know how Colorado is going to deal with all their transfers. People want to know how people are going to talk about sign stealing. People want to know for Colorado, was there a difference from the players or coaches' perspective about the play calling? And I don't want to say it's a leading question, but it's like a question where that's a trending topic. And in a sense, they are trying to get Shedeur to say something. And I think reporters, there's a fine line between a leading question and an inquisitive question. And I think that one was more on the latter or the forefront part, because obviously they want Shedeur Sanders to be like, yeah, when Coach Lewis calls plays, we do this differently. Or when Coach Shermer calls plays, this happens. And while this didn't happen when Sean Lewis is calling plays, like that's what they were hoping for. Obviously that would break the internet. That would lead to Shedeur being the most scrutinized player in college football. Mind you, Caleb Williams is out here being the most scrutinized player in college football right now. And so I think one comment by Shedeur would easily take that cake. Not that that's cake that you want to be taking. That's that ice cream cake that nobody likes. So obviously you don't want to be in the headlines for wrong reasons. They say all publicity is good publicity, but at the end of the day, that's really not. And Shedeur Sanders knows that. And so that was a good avoidance of a question by him. And he just continues to be a leader for this Colorado team. This episode of Locked on Buffs is also brought to you by our sponsor over at LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available, and that's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. I personally use LinkedIn to get my first ever job out of school. I was looking everywhere. I put in what I was good at, what my skill sets were, and to match jobs to my skill sets, and I was able to communicate with the hiring manager. So if you want to find the perfect candidate like I was, add your job and the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs number one in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedon. That's linkedin.com/lockedon to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Welcome back. We are talking about Arizona to conclude the show. I'm going to do this a little quicker since we're running out of time, but I think someone asked me about this in the comment section yesterday, and it was like, what is going on? Why is Arizona so good? And for starters, it all starts with Noah Fifita, their quarterback. He's a redshirt freshman. He took over for Jayden de Laura, who was the former Washington State star, and he's a gunslinger. I like Jayden de Laura's game when he's at his best. I hate it when he's at his worst, if I was an Arizona fan or Washington State fan, because he's the type of guy that can make any throw on the field, but he's also the type of guy that would look downfield, see his favorite target triple covered, and be like, I can make that throw. And when you're a gunslinger, sometimes you make them, sometimes you don't. And Noah Fifita takes the risk out of the play for Arizona. In his few games that he started, he took over after the Stanford game. He's an efficient passer. In his first 3 appearances, he was a combined 8 for 8 with obviously going 100%. Then he starts at against Washington, goes 27 of 39 for 3 touchdowns and a pick. This was his worst game statistically, completed 69% of his passes, had 232 yards, and also ran for 19. Very athletic runner too. He's a smart runner. He doesn't run away. Like he could get yards with his legs, but he likes to look forward. He likes to look downfield, kind of like what Shedeur does. Shedeur will run if absolutely necessary, but that's not what this guy's up to. Then USC throws for 5 touchdowns, 303 yards, completes 71% of his passes. Then this is where the terror starts. Like you're like, oh, the terror didn't start. No, this is where the terror starts. Playing number 19 Washington State on the road, they beat him 44-6. He throws for 342 yards and completes 79% of his passes. And then they go to Oregon State. They play against Oregon State, number 11 in the country at this time. Throws for 275 yards, 3 touchdowns. Then last week they play against UCLA, number 19 in the country, 300 yards, 3 touchdowns. So he has 14 touchdowns on the year, just 4 picks, is super efficient, is completing 76% of his passes, and he's the game changer for Arizona. What else is the game changer for Arizona? It has been their defense. I think a lot of people had questions about their defense. They took in some transfers. They took in Taylor Upshaw, who was a former Colorado Buffalo for about a month. They took in Justin Flo, the former viral star Oregon linebacker, and they took in a few other guys. They held Washington State to 6 points. They held Washington to 31, which I feel like that's a lot of points in a sense, but for Washington State, who's been putting up 40 and above, that's pretty good. They limited Oregon State to 24, and plus they were making big plays. They forced 3 fumbles, which took some momentum away. They got to the quarterback, had 1 tackle and then 3 tackles for a loss. They had 7 pass deflections against Oregon State. So they're just all over. This Arizona defense is much improved. And I think that's kind of the key to their success is Noah Fafita and their defense being improved. And so for Colorado, you have to limit their wide receivers. They have a really good wide receiver core. They have Teratoa McMillan, I believe is how you say his name. He has 52 catches for 753 yards and 7 touchdowns. Jacob Cowing, super underrated receiver. He's a 5'11 guy, 69 catches. Nice. 510 yards and 9 touchdowns. Transfer from UTEP. Burst onto the scene last year. Had 1,000 catches. That'd be crazy. Had 1,000 yards on 85 catches for 7 touchdowns. And he's just always open. And then they have Montana Lamonius Craig, who obviously was expected to kind of be a Colorado standout after that spring game. He's part of their wide receiver core. He's someone who could also make plays as well. Maybe a little revenge game for him. So they have a lot of weapons to look out for. Their running backs are pretty solid. Jonah Coleman is the one that stands out to me the most. So this Arizona team, is very much improved. I think it's going to be a tough game for Colorado. Arizona, I believe, is favored by 9 at this time. We'll see if that changes anywhere down the line. Just because, or they're favored by 10 now. Wow. Just because I think there's a lot of things working in their favor. So look out for Arizona. They're a very good team, very solid team. And I think that this is going to be an interesting match for Colorado. They have to win 2 more games to make a bowl game. And this is going to be a tough stretch. So trust in the process, like I said earlier. I think Coach Prime knows what he's doing. I think for those on the outside looking in, it just seems a little bit confusing. But he knows what he's doing. He's going to make the right decisions, I think. And Colorado Buffaloes will be trending in the right direction in no time. Hope you guys have a great day. Make sure to like, subscribe, and follow. We're nearing 4,000 subscribers. Let's get there. I appreciate you guys for tuning in every single day.